is going to be good just because I think your whole background is in teams and working with people. And one thing that we definitely don't focus enough on in healthcare is that aspect a lot. And people can kind of get caught up in the idea of just focusing on numbers or money or whatever. And so I think a good place to start today would be getting to know you and your background. And basically, what was your curiosity that led you to the field of event planning and where you are right now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I started. Real quick, is this like officially on? Are we going?
Yeah.
Anything?
So,
We good?
yeah. So I officially like start recording when you first come in, just so, and then I can go back and edit it later,
Perfect. That's what I
and
figured.
and
Just
make
want to
it
make sure.
smooth. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tee up that question again? Or are you going to edit
I can,
that?
I
Sorry.
can, I can edit it right out. We'll be good.
All right. Perfect. So, yeah, my interest in high school was music. I was a big music guy. I went to Florida State for music. But even as a kid, when I was from 5 years old, growing up in church, um, it it always interested me, the arts, and also how kind of the whole show kind of came together. So I'm kind of a show guy. Like I love a good show, and understanding the goal of the show, but then also the elements and what it takes to kind of create that show. It's something that I kind of excelled at. I was able to kind of spot things, and we should probably be looking at that. That could be an issue. So that always was part of my mentality when I was either on stage, and curiosity about how things worked, and different technical elements within the show. So that kind of carried over, and then got an opportunity to come up to Atlanta um, from Tallahassee, and do some work up here. And it started evolving into from a performance side to producing events, uh, and traveling, and getting to meet a lot of great people and work with some really really talented folks. And then out of that kind of grew the skill set, and you kind of become kind of a known quantity, a safe quantity, a person that's going to deliver a good quality product.
Yeah.
That's always important in this industry, because when it comes to live events, trust is a massive issue when a corporation is entrusting a live presentation of their CEO to you to run and direct.
Right.
So, once you kind of break into that field, and are able to kind of manage all those moving parts and do it fairly well, with an incredible team around you, and then execute and deliver that end product, more than likely delivering above their expectations, which is a great, great thing. It just kind of evolved, and that's kind of how my career developed.
Yeah. And so today, what events are you typically involved in? What are you setting up?
So anything from, well, right now, thanks to COVID,
Yeah.
we've been somewhat dead for the past year. Our industry took a massive hit, as as most people know. Concerts to corporate meetings to anything, athletic events. They're just any type of public gathering just went away. So we had our last event for about 6,000 people in Las Vegas in March of last year. And then we shut down after that. We actually closed our offices March 13th, worked from home, and the whole live event side went away for um, close to a year. Now we've had a couple of smaller live events kind of open up. We've had a lot of video content. So I produce a lot of video stuff, a lot of video content, a lot of talking heads, executives sharing their vision, a lot of different just messaging, creative thought, storytelling. And now that live events are coming back, we're moving back into the live event space.
That's awesome. I'm sure
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
been anticipating getting back into that, right?
yeah. Everybody has been. The whole
Yeah. No.
team
Yeah. Yeah.
is
You're right.
extremely excited to get back on the road, and stretch the legs, and work in a creative manner with from top to bottom from an event site on an event site.
So initially on during COVID, was it? I know it was kind of shit hit the fan. Everyone was just trying to figure stuff out. How did you guys kind of bob and weave and start to manage things like that? Did everything just turn into online?
Yeah, we quickly saw that people still had to communicate. So obviously Zoom was the platform of choice initially, and then other, Teams and all those other things kind of came about. So it was really just kind of getting your feet. And then quickly realized that, people still had to communicate their message to their audience, and still had to, whether it's going to be a virtual space or a platform, still had to have content created. And then you throw in everybody's internet wasn't quite up to the quality that it was at that time. Everybody's good internet, but everybody realized, wow, we've got to, amp up our speed. So, live elements, there were sometimes issues with internet or connectivity during a live show. So they started realizing, hey, we can probably pre-package these presentations and then upload them online, almost like an on-demand type element for these virtual conferences that would be a couple days, and the people could go in and kind of choose their own adventure, if you want to call it that, and kind of go to the sessions they want to see, and you have a general session, some breakouts, and they kind of pick and choose what they want to watch. And everybody was at home watching, the kids and the dogs, and having a lot of dogs. So tuning into a virtual space was tough. It's not, you're not going to expect somebody to sit there for 8 hours and watch a conference, or, a 4-hour general session and then go to breakouts, because they got to feed the kids, or they've got to take care of stuff at home. So the virtual space was initially, it was very hard to figure out what worked and what didn't. Everybody had big plans. And I think when it came down to it, really simplicity is what drove the virtual space. Like, make it simple. Can make your messaging concise. We don't need to hear a bunch. We don't need to hear a 45-minute keynote. Let's get it down to 15 to 20 minutes and really tighten up the message and make it, as popping, eye-catching as possible, so the audience at home quickly engages, and then also really takes in what you're saying. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
it did. Yeah.
The virtual space changed everything, and we had to pivot and get there. And then it was more of a process, a drawn out process, to figure out really where we need to land, from building out a studio to filming online to sending out, COVID, safe crews to film outside if need be. So a lot of different pivoting moves.
Yeah, and healthcare had a pivot too, and the way you're talking is just like, it happened the same way. Everything became virtual. Everything's either maybe at home or over the computer. And sometimes getting that assessment or getting anything with healthcare, you have to be able to connect with that other person and be able, it happens so rapidly. There was a little bit of telehealth prior to, COVID, with people like hard to reach areas like the middle of Montana. It's going to be, you got to telehealth, but with COVID, you definitely saw this big shift, and everyone's like, okay, what do we do? Oh, we need better internet. If I'm going to be seeing like 13 patients a day, I need to be able to be like on top of it. And you started talking about capturing people's attention and getting them like wrapped into what you guys were doing virtually. How did you guys do that?
It was a challenge. You have to drive into that message bucket and really find out, pull out those key components that you really want people to take home. Because then, a lot of times they were told, hit your 3 marks and then expand on those 3 marks. Well, it really came down to executives really tighten up that messaging. And one thing that really, captured folks was dealing with the situation, really addressing the situation. And there was a lot of people wondering what's happening next. And, specifically in each industry that we kind of help support from the messaging standpoint. So that was a component that people, were attentive to. People needed to hear, where am I supposed to go now? What am I supposed to do? What's happening with our company? So there was a lot of big things that happened from a messaging standpoint. From, are we going to keep people on? Are we ever going to go back to the office? Are we going to be working from home for a while? And then you have the customer facing component, which I'm imagine you're kind of referencing is engaging them. We try to make the presentation or the visual content as engaging, from great imagery to animated graphics coming on screen. Never just talking to a PowerPoint, never just having a PowerPoint slide on, having a VO. Like, we tried to always have a face, a talking head on screen, and having visuals to support what they were saying, and also making sure their message was concise and that it wasn't long-winded. So anytime that you can not just have just a talking head, which is great, obviously in your world, talking to a doctor is necessary, but we found that, anytime you can bring some type of visual to demonstrate what you're saying or to accent what you're saying, it really helped the audience continue on with engaging.
It's tough because in my mind, I'm okay. Maybe you're explaining something. Maybe you're a doctor and you're trying to explain something to a patient. You're describing anatomy, or perhaps you're describing some process that's happening to a patient. And I can see that maybe like having a visual where you can like say, okay, this is the bone, this is the thing that you were going to be talking about today, or whatever. And I'm thinking that you had to have to work with a lot of different people to try and make sure those visuals look good. What was it like to maybe work on that side of things? Did you have people involved that were already doing things like that, or was that something completely new?
Oh, well, so part of our world is video production. So it
Okay.
wasn't anything new to us, but you definitely had to get creative in, the communication of back and forth of reviewing content, really kind of staying on, because there was so much content to review. Like
Right.
normally, they build out, whatever PowerPoint or whatever they want to show on site for the live event, show up, plug it in, you do the presentation, you roll out. Now you had video content for 30 sessions, and each of those sessions running 30 minutes, you now have people that have to review all of that content. So
Right.
who's watching this to make sure what they're saying is correct, one, and that the visuals match up. So that was a big challenge in our world, was the actual making sure the QC component, making sure everything was right. And so that was a challenge on the corporate side, our client side, to make sure people were really watching everything. And then, a day before the program, they would catch multiple things because finally they were putting eyes on things. And
Hmm.
so it's just, there was a lot of kind of like last minute scrambling on certain things because of time, just time. And then you also we're all at home having to deal with family, and having to deal with family, issues, or just the COVID issue, like just the fear of that unknown, and so there was a lot of challenges when it came to editing, creating that content, creating the graphics. But we were well versed in that. It was just a matter of the review process, if I can be honest. That was the toughest part of it, really.
Yeah, and even for this, like I record everything here, and then I'll go back and go over like the clips and make sure like things look good and stuff. And that is probably the most time consuming thing, is just reviewing the thing that you're trying to get out there. And it's kind of something that you don't really think about until you start getting into it, and you're like, man, this is something that I was not expecting.
Yeah, it takes some time. And
Yeah.
once you render it out, you got to make sure that the render took it's all kinds of technical stuff, but it's a lot of it made for a fun, challenging time. It
Yeah,
kept
yeah,
us on our
yeah.
toes.
And I can
So
imagine that communication had to be so crucial in those stages. And you said you're doing everything on Zoom. How did your communication skills maybe changed? And from the time that you had to start doing COVID stuff to like managing through it and doing all the different events and stuff, because I'm sure you had to like be like, okay, this isn't looking good. This isn't doing that. And before, where you can be like, go down the hallway and talk to somebody, now you got to like set up a meeting and do all this other stuff. So was that difficult for you to transition?
it just took some kind of thinking through with the team, and what we quickly kind of realized is that we need to kind of like just a group kind of document, a spreadsheet that we could basically became a tracking document for each event, each
Mm.
that we're developing content for. That way we could track each presentation, whether it's one big kind of video file or one mini kind of breakout videos, track who's what content, what they had to display, what added content, whether videos or bumper, whatever that was needed for each of those presentations. We had to track it, and then we came up with kind of a system of is it in edit, is it in review, what versions in review. So the need. Yeah, I told my team, I was like, you have to be somewhat OCD with organization and giving information on this tracker, because it's so important that we're up to speed on where each kind of video lives and each of the content categories live. So if somebody were to get sick, because we actually had to deal with this. So if somebody were to get sick, somebody could pick up this process really quickly and know exactly where things stood, to support the team and make sure we delivered the end product as needed. So that added a whole other element. You've got a family member who's possibly sick, so then they've got to quarantine, and then you don't want, there may not be communication in there, and it was just so many unknowns about COVID. So it was like, hey, just go do your thing, we'll deal with it. So you had to be able to kind of quickly communicate what's going on in a real world sense, and then also track what was going on from a project sense, and then get updates from the client as needed, make sure those were tracked, and then deliver, files for review, get edit points. It's a process, man. I don't want to bore your audience.
No, no, you're not. And it's interesting because, these processes, you can relate to anything. And even in
Yeah,
a health, and even in a healthcare setting, as a doctor, you have to be talking to the nurses, and the nurses have to be talking to the front desk. The front desk got to be talking back to the doctors, and everyone's got to be coordinating. And especially
exactly.
during the times of COVID, and, like you said, someone goes out or a family member goes out being sick and stuff, you have to adapt and change and be like, listen, you're going to be taking on this for the next day or two, and just until we can figure stuff out, and
Correct.
you're going to have to adapt and overcome. And I think, sometimes people have a hard time doing that. They're like, well, wait a minute, you only told me that I have to do X, Y, and Z. Why are you having me doing A and B right now? And did you meet any resistance with that? Or do you guys have a pretty good team where you're like, okay, we're all one unit, we have a collective goal, and we're moving towards that?
No, the team was amazing. They jumped in, willing to do anything. I think the biggest thing was just overall. I think we all just struggled, not just mentally, like the world shut down. We don't know where the world's going, and then you also have social stuff going on.
Mm.
I know that in my apartment where I live in Atlanta, there was a lot of stuff that I could see when everything was kind of erupting from a social standpoint and demonstrations. So you've got that going on, and you've got COVID happening, and basically our industry goes basically shutting down. And we're also having to pivot and learn a new way of developing content for the world. So my focus was, one, to make sure that we, as a team, came up with a plan to execute this content delivery. Then what are the steps from a communication standpoint to make sure it's executed properly? And then make sure the team's mental health was okay. Like that
Mm.
was, I tried to do daily or every other day, just check-ins, every 3 days. How you doing? Like do you need a breather? Do you like it? That was so important because just the mental strain on people during this time. And if you really think back to what May and what April and June, what that looked like, there was like, it was just mentally just wearing on you. And where is this going to end? When are we going to, is this ever going to end? So is this the new norm? So that was the biggest thing, is making sure that we work together as a team to come up with what that plan and communication and execution plan would be. And then, are they mentally good? And if they
Mm.
need to take a breather, take it. We'll figure it out. We'll work together, and everybody can pick up and as needed. So there was a lot of just kind of sorting things out and making sure the team was okay too.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I remember, I remember last year during the summer, we had the fires out here in California,
Yeah.
and it was like, I'm surrounded by fire. There's a pandemic going on. There's so many. It's an election year. I remember calling my parents. I'm like, yeah, I picked a great time to come out here. Everything's fine, and there's fires in the background. It's just kind of a crazy year.
Yeah. I was supposed to get married in May. So you add that into the
Oh,
mix in Italy, like the mecca of the whole deal.
right.
So there was just so many levels of just craziness going on. And you're like, you just step back and go, okay, I'm going to, I trust the higher power that somebody knows what's going on. So
Hmm.
it was an interesting time to
It
be.
certainly is. And, as healthcare providers, a lot of the time we can take on multiple roles. And what I mean by that is, we go to school, we get the degree, and we become a doctor, we become a nurse, we become a speech pathologist, whatever. But what ends up happening is we end up taking on several roles, meaning like, we become like a psychologist sometimes. Sometimes we're just, sometimes we're just like a shoulder to cry on or whatever. For you, was this a time where you started taking on roles that you think were like outside of what you expected the job to be?
Oh yeah. I've always had a hand in kind of video production or kind of managing uh, process, but it definitely was elevated, I would say. And going to be an online recording studio producer. I'd never, managed an online kind of broadcast recording session, or a studio director. I became that. So totally. Totally feel you on that. And the one thing that we've always kind of wanted to do as a company is kind of hire hybrids, people that had skill sets that maybe they weren't basically tapped for that job, but if something were to arise, we knew that we could easily tap them to support, or at least give thoughts on, because they maybe had some experience, or we knew that they could do that. Maybe they hadn't done it, but we knew that given the opportunity, my bet's on her to step up and make that happen. So I think we hired wisely in the past, and that different role we kind of come on a term with hybrid. You're just a hybrid. We believe in that. I'm a huge believer that hybrids are great to have on a team because they can just jump in there and make it happen, and are willing to. Yeah, attitude, and that was a major thing as well. Like just keeping the attitudes up, positivity, and that can-do spirit, no matter what, definitely helps as well.
Yeah, is that like a kind of a determining factor when you're hiring? Is just like optimism, making sure you have a good head on your shoulders? Because sometimes there's people who are really good at what they do, but sometimes you put them in a tight situation, they're like, I don't know, and they don't
Yeah.
perform well under pressure. Is that something that you are involved with a lot with like the hiring process, and is that something that you're really looking for? And as your business is very high end and very fast paced, I'm assuming that's what you look for.
Yeah, definitely somebody that can connect, because there's a lot of client interaction, especially with the folks that kind of surround on my team. So it's a positivity. There's good instincts that you look for. There's solid kind of grounded reality, but also slightly creative type. Um, and it's a very specific person that I particularly look for, just because being in the industry as long, I kind of know what talents and gifts that I've kind of tapped in certain moments that I try to look for to make sure they kind of have, because I know we're pulled on in different ways in certain situations. But yeah, yeah, definitely a solid base of just a good head, good optimism, but not rose-colored glasses. I guess you could say you got to have
Hmm.
a bit of reality in there as well, because you can't walk in a room and go, "Oh, it's gonna be great." But then if there's like massive issues glaring at you, you can't just kind of ignore them. You've got to address the issues. So it takes that type of personality kind of to do this role.
Yeah, and you said you were having conversations with people, just checking in to make sure they're okay. Were there a lot of situations where things weren't okay, and you had to maybe direct them in a way to go get help, or was that something that you didn't thankfully have to see?
Yeah, I'll talk generally here. There were some situations that we said, hey, get outside. Or hey, take a breather. When you got so, I think, fearful of the moment, and it was just like, it was kind of being preached at you. It was like fear, like, oh, I go in the world, and I was like, hey, breathe. One, breathe. We're
Yeah.
here, and let's step back. Get some exercise. That's actually one thing I told. I said, get outside, and you're sitting on your couch way too much, and your brain's racking and going crazy right now, and you're thinking of all the bad things. Get outside, get some fresh air, go for a walk every day. Um, at that point, I was a believer. You can edit this out, but I was a believer. Like, most likely, you're not going to catch it from fresh air. You're just not. I don't
Yeah,
see that
yeah,
happening. But
yeah.
I'm not. I wasn't a doctor. It's just my gut. So I was
Yeah.
like, you can't hurt and walking in a park. I just felt like, at that point, just get outside and get some fresh air and go for a walk, go for a run. And checked in, different person 2 weeks later. And so I just I know that it was important to see that mental component, because the world was such a crazy place, and to say, one, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Two, and I'm not a like a mental health advisor, but there's some simple things that you can say. Okay, I think this could help, and then if not, we can definitely get you to somebody who can help you. And so that was super important. That you take the temperature of each of your employees and support where you can, and if you can't, find the support they need.
Yeah, and I think from a standpoint of just being a leader, I think that's super crucial. It doesn't even have to be in healthcare; it could be literally anything.
Oh yeah.
Checking in with your teammates has got to be is an essential role as the leader, and you got to make sure that every single cog is doing what they're supposed to do, and not only doing what they're supposed to do, but they're happy where they're at, and also that they're mentally good. Because if you don't, then the cogs don't turn and things don't go as well as as planned. And were you the one always having to initiate that, or were the people who like came to you and were like, listen, so I can't do this anymore. Like I'm feeling something. This is completely different. I'm just like I need to take a break.
Yeah, nobody came and initiated, and nobody ever, even when I checked in, said, I can't do anymore. They just you could just tell, you could kind of
Mm.
sense it. And not that they couldn't do anymore. They just need a little breather. Like, hey, take the weekend. Don't worry about this. I'll cover for you. I got you. Or, I'll run the lead on this communication. You just go monitor, just check in from time to time, but focus on what you need to focus on to get to a better place. So it's just more checking in versus them reaching out, which probably was just the world that we lived in as well. It was very isolated. You stay to yourself, and so there was probably probably the fear of being looked at as not willing to do what's needed, or possibly even be a little like weaker in the situation than other employees that may not be having the issues that they're having. So I just wanted to, I was like, that's why I was like, I don't, I just wanted to initiate conversations just to check in, and whether they were honest in the conversations or whether they weren't, it's on them. But I felt like there was honest feedback given, and I felt like the team, I don't know if it helped, but it made me feel better about being able to see into the team and make sure they were okay, and be able to kind of read them and what they were kind of putting off from a vibe standpoint.
I think starting the conversation is the most important part, because
Oh, absolutely.
if they don't have that mode of communication, even if you never started, they don't know it's there.
Yeah.
And I think you did a great thing by trying to do that, especially during the time of COVID and everything that with event planning, it had to just be such a freaking stressful time of like, am I going to work? Is this working out? What's going to happen? Do I have to
Yeah.
pivot? Like what? I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah. It was an insane time. So hopefully we'll never have to go through something like that again. But if we do, we're prepared and we kind of know kind of which way to go. But I can only, like, I was very fortunate to have somebody to be in the same household with. I can only imagine what it was for somebody to be alone.
Yeah.
And just from a from a mental health standpoint, from a physical health standpoint, to not have that initiation of, hey, let's go for a walk, or hey, because my wife and I went for walks daily. I mean, we would go around the neighborhood and just walk. That's all we did, because number one, it was a beautiful spring here in Atlanta for some reason that spring. So we were just outside as much as we could. But if you were just kind of sitting and watching TV and kind of just getting overwhelmed by news reports, I could see where it could take a total mental strain on where you would be from a mental standpoint. So um, it was so important to just check in and encourage, and say, hey, get out, get it, go to a park, do something. So
Was that how you got through mentally with everything? I mean, I'm sure, it's good to be a provider for your team members, but also, being a leader, you take on more mental responsibility, and you also have to put on like the smiling face for everybody and be like, hey, everything's good. We're all good. But, may have some things in the back of your mind. You were going to get married. For you, was it just those walks, spending time with somebody? Were those the things that helped you get through this difficult time?
Yeah, absolutely. That, and just cooking good dinners, and just like, just like nothing crazy, just like being, we actually ate really healthy during that time. Just try to make conscious effort to do that. But yeah, just really kind of going for, like, just getting outside. I mean, to me, I love being outdoors. That's a big mental, just I love it, and so it's a big kind of help for me, and just communicating, having that dialogue with others really spurred me on to make me feel like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. So it encouraged me to keep going, and just the challenge of figuring out what the next steps were with the team, and collaborating with the team to figure out, okay, where do we go here? Like, it kept you. The goal was to survive, because we knew that some companies wouldn't survive. So the goal was to survive, and what's that path to survival? So that was the driving force as well.
And then were you exercising at all? Was it something that I know walking was kind of your mode of exercise, but what is your relationship with exercise, and how did that perhaps help you, or you didn't get into it during COVID? Was that something that really helped you as well?
Yeah, I mean, we walked, we'd go for runs. We had a great gym, so we'd work out. I have a Peloton, so I didn't have it at my apartment, which stunk. But had a great gym. We were as thorough and as thoughtful, but again, the gym shut down, and so
Mhm.
it was a lot of outdoor stuff. All the gyms shut down, and so I did a lot of. I follow a couple of trainers on Instagram, so I did a lot of like body weight workouts, and just trying to be conscious of it. You're in your apartment, so a lot of walks, a lot of runs, a lot of body weight stuff because the gym wasn't open until probably end of summer. So even the pool wasn't open. So that was one thing. It was like, the stuff that we wanted access to that we're paying for, just we didn't have access to. So a lot of just intentional effort to just maintain, eat better. The COVID, what they call the COVID-19, truly the like COVID-19 pounds. So
Right.
I think we really try to be conscious about that and really thoughtful about that and make sure we have a incredible wife that drives that and helps leads that. So she's a great partner on that, like bringing fresh recipe books and ideas to the table, and she's an incredible resource for that as well. So
That's fantastic. And how did you keep your team healthy, eating well? I mean, we've talked about it before. It's very easy when you guys are working really hard and be like, grab the easiest thing possible, which would just be like pizza. It's cheap. Everyone can have some and then get going about their business. But, if you're working really hard and you're eating really bad, sometimes you can get that brain fog and you're not performing as effectively as possible. Did you take steps to try and make sure they can at least have an option to eat as healthy as they could?
So during COVID, obviously everybody's at home, so I wasn't
Right.
monitoring obviously what they're eating. But if we're kind of referencing road events, so when we're on the road, it is hard. And you and I discussed this in a previous conversation, where you're on an event site and it may be limited access to really healthy options. I mean, there's some better options. Some hotels provide better food options than other hotels when you're part of the crew. But a lot of times you're up at 5 a.m. You're in your call time is 6. You're grabbing. I'm a big banana guy in the morning. Grab a banana, grab a cup of coffee, and I'm on. So
Mhm.
so I try to kind of get things rolling that way. But not everybody's that way. So a lot of times it's pastry platters. Because it's bread's cheap. They'll put it
Tastes
out, and
good.
everybody grabs a muffin, and it's true. They'll throw some fruit out there, but most of the times it's grab a bagel, grab a muffin. I do not do that. I will grab the banana and roll with it because I like bananas. But that said, when you're on the road, we try to provide healthier options, but sometimes in the need that's in the time span that you have to eat, you don't have time to sit down and eat a salad. It's got to be either like a grab and go sandwich or something like that's easy to eat as you work, like those pizzas or like those sandwiches or whatever it may be. So that is the challenge that I've talked to many people about. Is just it's getting better. In fact, I was on show site uh, last week for an event, and they had a vegan option. I was the only person to order this vegan vegetable bowl. Everybody ordered like roast beef or turkey. Again, just kind of what they know and what they kind of work. Because it is a long day, because they're pulling 16, 17-hour days, I don't push back. I don't really harass somebody, and I say harass with a cheek with a wink and a nod, but like I don't really say, you sure you don't want the vegan option? Because
Yeah.
again, I have to be thoughtful about that.
You don't want to
Like
be
you
that
can't
guy
like
either.
you can't like say that, like then they're like, wait, am I fat? That whole thing. So but I can tell you it was the best. I actually talked to Kelly about it. I was like, it was the best vegan option I've ever had on show site by hands down. Like the salad was awesome. Like the way they made it, the vegetables were great, the great flavor. I was like, I just want to find the recipe and make that, and I'll just take that to work every day. So I think people are getting better at it. I think it doesn't have to be vegan. It can be vegetarian. It can be just a healthier option. It's got to be done well though. If people it can't taste like cardboard. It still has to taste somewhat good to these guys that only have so much time to eat, and they're on the road, they're away from the families, they're not getting a home cooked meal, so it's still got to taste somewhat good to them. So I think that's a challenge as well that needs to be faced, is like taking really great vegan options that are really getting better with taste, or vegetarian options, or just healthier options with proteins, because I'm a protein guy. I believe like I process proteins really well, so I believe in protein. So I'm not like an all vegetables guy. I do love veggie focused meals, but I love protein. And I think it's got to get a little better, especially for my industry. Because I mean, you're talking about backstage road crews for concerts, and they're just grabbing sandwiches and whatever's easiest. It's not the healthiest environment, and the healthiest options aren't available. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, well,
it's tough. It's
I
tough
actually
when you're on
want
the
to
road.
I want you to dive a little bit deeper into like
Sure.
the whole process from beginning to end of being on the road, because I'm not familiar with the space. And so, you say you're working 16 to 17 hours, and you're like you're just I can't imagine there's not a time you can just sit down and eat. And so maybe paint us a picture a little bit better of like being on the road and like setting up these events and like how hectic it actually is.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not all like nonstop. You're going, well, my role can be, and like associate producers are like, they can, or PMs, they can, project managers, they can have a basically a nonstop kind of schedule. But let's take your standard kind of corporate meeting. You essentially have, a team that kind of is your leadership team from a technical side and from an account management side. You kind of work together to make everything kind of work. And then each team each leader has kind of a team that supports them, whether it's, some PAs for the, producer and that team, account managers, different room leaders that may have different areas of support, like an expo hall or a bunch of breakouts, or like a night event that could be off property that you have a team leading. And then you've got the technical side. So all the technical team that makes all those things come to life. So the video team that brings all the video elements and all the PowerPoints and all the video playback and all that stuff. And you've got the audio team that mic people up and run the all the main audio that you hear in the room, and do everything that kind of makes that sound and sound great. You get the lighting team that runs all the lighting, and then you've got that team that works together to run all the power and everything. And there's a lot of details that go into live events that probably people never ever think about. But if you go to concert, all those elements that go up in the air and come down, that's what we do, just more of a corporate scale. So you got all that cabling, all that power run, all that rigging, all the lighting, sound, kind of video components, that goes into a ballroom, comes out of a ballroom, multiple times throughout the year. And then you've got the other elements, other shows within that show. So you got breakouts, so you got an expo hall that have maybe trade show elements, and you got maybe a speaker or theater that's kind of having highlighted sponsor people there, and you've got an offsite property that's having a massive party for 5,000 people. You've got to do all the content, make sure the talent there is ready to go. So you've got all this team just working through details and details and details and details and details. And that's our world, is just all details. So managing the team, making sure you're tracking your timeline, making sure your team's supported, making sure the team's moving forward, having meetings with hotels or offsite properties with clients, gathering content, reviewing content, traveling home. You've got to go to the hotel room to change for an event. So then you're quickly coming back down because you've been in your work clothes all day, and now you've got to get dressed up and come down and direct the show or be part of the show. It's nonstop. It's a busy time. There's
so
a
you're
lot
saying
of
you're
details.
busy is what you're saying.
It's a bit when you're on site for a bigger show, it's pretty busy. So then in that time frame, to get up at 4 a.m. to work out when you're gonna have a 14-hour day, it's tough, because I know I can work on less sleep than most people. I can work generally on 4 to 5 hours, not for an extended long time, but for a short range, about a week and a half. I can go on 5 hours. I'm pretty good. Like I get up, I'm rolling. Mentally, I feel sharp because I'm constantly walking or constantly moving. And that's another positive. That's being on a show site. You're constantly moving. Usually, you're moving. You're walking around the space. There was a time when I think one day I tracked 30,000 steps in New Orleans, and so you're constantly moving. So that helps obviously burn calories. So when you get up, I'm not generally, gonna go work out at 4 or 5 in the morning. It's just not something that I'm gonna do. I've never been a big fan of working out in the morning. I like either like a mid-afternoon or like a later in the day workout. It's just kind of way my brain kind of works. But so I'm getting up, getting ready. I'm headed to the show site or the whatever room I need to be in to do rehearsals or prep for the day, making sure the crew's kind of up and running, usually having some breakfast, whether that's sort of, pastries or some fruit tray. And then we go. And then we break for lunch, whether that's a walk away. So you can do a walk away and go have lunch somewhere, so they can choose. That's their choice. A lot of times they choose we'll grab a salad there or eat a bit healthier. But sometimes, it's just like, hey, go grab it and then bring it back. And again, each meal break kind of lends itself to what you're currently working on and what the situation is. And then we're gearing up for like an evening program. So they'll have dinner either catered, and hotels usually are like pastas and chicken, something that's a little cheaper in nature, just because we're the crew and the production team. And it's not, you're not getting, your top, and we don't need top of the, echelon type food, but it's not the healthiest food.
Yeah.
There is usually a salad, but a lot of times you need some substance because you've been burning calories all day as well.
Yeah, because
So it's just a bit of a
the sheer
dance.
size of these events are huge. Like you're
Right.
having large amounts of people, right?
Right. I mean, we work in ballrooms that are 80,000 to 100,000 square feet in size. So they're just, that's one ballroom. So it's, yeah, five to, it's 2 to 5,000 people, 6,000 people. So it's just it can range, obviously from an attendee standpoint, and the scope can range for each event, but generally you're moving a lot. You're constantly kind of going. And so just the healthy options aren't just quite ready to available. They're getting better. And I
Yeah.
can tell you, out of COVID, I've actually hung out with some of the crew members, and they've made a conscious better decision during COVID to be better. A lot of that intermittent fasting is a real big
Yeah.
thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not yay or nay on it. I'm just saying I've had some guys lose some weight. I'm like, you've lost some weight. Like, yeah, doing the intermittent fasting, it's really working well for it. So they've been more conscious during COVID
Mm.
to take some steps to be better and to be healthier, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But on show side, it's tough. And then you're traveling, you're on an airplane. You got to eat on the plane because you have to go straight to a meeting when you get there. It's just there's challenges in just food on the go being healthier versus um, unhealthy. I mean, it's just tough. It's just tough.
Yeah. Have you been able to develop or cultivate a mindset of like, I'm going to choose that banana over the donut, or I'm going to choose that banana over, uh, insert any other bad food with you, like
Yeah.
how do you develop it? Because I mean, you're busy, and I think that's something I want to highlight to people. 'Cause you're bouncing around, your days start early, your days end late, and uh, e- even in those small little moments that you could easily grab the easiest thing possible to eat. You're grabbing that banana and you're drinking coffee and you're moving and you're trying to choose a better option of what's
Right.
available to you. And I think that is really important. It's just like make the decision with what you got. And sometimes you can't help it, and that's completely okay. And you have to, make do, but you're still making that decision. So how have you cultivated a mind to be like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it right?
It's just habits. You develop good habits, and it's tough. It's tough. Like, you get in the rhythm and you're good, and then you don't have access to like maybe like a store that has a banana. Like, I try to actually go buy some bananas when I get on when I land or at some break. Get out there, grab some healthier snacks, have them in my room, so I'm not dependent on maybe filling myself up from an energy standpoint on a meal that's I know is not going to be the healthiest. So I try to be conscious about, like, grabbing some almonds, grabbing some bananas, just grabbing, bottled water, just grabbing stuff that I can have in my room that I quickly grab. So that's one. You have to be intentional about how you approach the situation you're going to be in and have a plan in place to be kind of eliminate those. I don't have any food. Oh, donut. I'll burn it off. I'll burn it off. I'll burn it off. And that's an easy thing, because you most likely will. I mean, you're going to walk around a lot. You're going to be kind of up in energy and adrenaline going. So you probably will. But it's just those all processed and all the saturated stuff that you can't really kind of see that you're eating. So that's why I really try to be intentional and have a plan. If I know I'm going to be in a downtown hotel, I'm like, all right, is there a certain store that I know carries healthier stuff? Is it around? Is it nearby that I can just walk over, grab some stuff, throw it in the room? I'm good to go. So that's one plan. One thing that I do is either have it in the room or have a resource that I know I'm going to be able to access every morning, or just request it that in addition to the pastry plate, throw some bananas on there. So, and usually
Right.
they don't have a problem. Bananas are cheap, like they're cheap, so
Yeah.
there's no excuse. And so that's my go-to. So.
Yeah, and you said developing habits, and it's interesting because your job is you're moving around a lot, and so sometimes your job can change. And so if your habits before were like, okay, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to eat that, I'm going to work it off, and then all of a sudden your job changes where you're not moving as much, and all of a sudden you start packing on the pounds, and you're like, why is this happening? So I think it's crucial that people early on can understand that even though you're busy, even though you got things going on, you can still form habits and do the best that you can in a bad situation to try and eat healthier, pick better options, and develop habits early on. So that way, when, maybe when you stop working, or you just want to live a healthier lifestyle, you'll have those habits already in place. So that way you can live a better life and probably perform better. Right. Cause I'm assuming I mean, I know when I eat a donut, I'm like, I'm all right. I'm going to take a nap in about 20 minutes here, cause I'm going to pass
Exactly.
out.
Exactly.
It's going to be like a
Yeah,
sugar
no,
bomb.
it's so true. Like, that's one thing that we did when everything kind of shut down. My wife is a co-founder of a really great healthy restaurant here in Atlanta. and they had to kind of stop things. So I mean, sometimes she'll grab a bowl, like it's a grain and kind of organic, kind of healthier salad place in Atlanta. And she would we make salads at home then. Like it was like, she actually knew kind of what it took to kind of create some of my favorite bowls there. So like we just got the salad and some of the elements that kind of and made bowls for lunch. So I'd get up and eat a banana and eat a salad, and then we cook some type of good meal at dinner. Nothing crazy, but we just try to be intentional about how we approach that. So again, I love that healthier lunch, lighter lunch that I think allows your energy to kind of keep moving it throughout the day. It's just tough sometimes when you're moving and don't have all the options available to you on show site, or when you're in meetings or something like that. It's just traveling can. I've told her, I was like, if you can figure out the fast food that can be like just a healthy, like really great healthy wrap that's just easy to eat and just really like organic, you're gonna make a gazillion dollars if you figure that out.
Yeah,
be the healthy McDonald's on every corner, or whatever. Not McDonald's, but I'm saying like be that option. Like there's no option there in a fast food sense that's healthy and organic. I'm like, if somebody could figure that out, it's just it's just waiting to be
used. Yeah,
really.
There's a couple take home. So I used to use Freshly. Shout out to Freshly if
Yeah.
you'd like to help out. But no, Freshly's been great. I mean, you get your meals delivered to you, and you can really just, you pop it in the microwave, and you have a good healthy meal that sits in front of you, and you can, you don't have to worry about, cooking food, or you don't have to worry about going to the grocery store. So I think those options are starting to pop around a little bit more, and people are more apt to doing that, because it delivers to your door, you put it in the fridge, and you pop it in the microwave, and you're done. And I think at the very least, it's something better than, again, using all the options that are within your scope, so that way you can do the best that you can, right?
True. And that's absolutely correct. Like if I planned a little better, and I'm more talking like traveling, because a lot of times we're driving places
Absolutely.
too. So that's a challenge. Like when you're on the road, you've got to, after 5 hours, you got to stop. A lot of times you don't pack a cooler for the road. Those healthier options that are available that you can't maybe do a sit down full lunch, what are those options? So I totally agree with you. If you're thoughtful and plan it out and really intentional about it, absolutely can. And that's something I can definitely be better about. But yeah, just having those options that are, and as it expands, I think it's becoming the norm in America. There are healthier options that are expanding, kind of the metro, obviously, areas. You have more options than you do maybe in the outskirts, and then as you're traveling, kind of some of those rural areas. But I just know that there's a need for sure. Those road warriors, all those people that are on the road constantly driving and going places. There's not a lot of options out there for them.
Yeah, it's kind of this hidden business that people don't really think about. Like, I don't, on a day-to-day basis, or even if you go to like a concert, if you go to a comedy show, you're not thinking about every little piece that goes into that thing. And like being on the road, all the workers that come into it and basically coerce into one event at one time.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it's admirable. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, it's hard to sometimes get friends together on a dinner night rather than coerce so many people and make sure that everyone has a good time.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of it's details, all details, and planning. So
Speaking of planning, how do you set goals for your team? Like, are you guys setting goals in the beginning of the week? Are you guys having daily meetings to talk about like what needs to get done for an event to happen? I guess walk us through the process of like how you're leading your team and perhaps setting goals for them.
yeah, we've had obviously when we were at home, it was a lot of Zoom kind of updates and just kind of seeing things can settle. So there were a lot of things happening. So we kind of weekly check-ins, making everything's good. Right now, we're kind of in that transition period. So we're finishing up a lot of video content for virtual elements. We're kind of in a slower period. I think going back, if I step back to kind of pre-COVID, it was, weekly updates and then one-on-ones with teams that were supporting each event. Because again, you want to be concise, or I try to be as efficient as possible with my team's time. So meetings were we try to be very thoughtful in having meetings, and also very thoughtful in our communication. So we're big fans of Slack, love Slack. And so we would develop an event channel for each event. So a lot of the communication that could be tracked and made sure we go back and said, hey, we talked about this then, just want to make sure that, hey, you saw this, give me a thumbs up. you can do that on Slack and make sure, versus having a weekly or daily check-in, because we want to allow, because our life is busy on the road. I don't want to, like, I don't want to bring everybody into the office to have a debrief and then talk about the next week's events on their one day they have to go home and do laundry. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you've got to be thoughtful about that and how you approach people's schedules, and not, if they're coming back from a show or they've been up for a long time, a couple of days in a row, you want to, and you may not have some key players there that need to have some time with their kids, just have some chill time and some downtime to kind of what we talked about, like to restore, to heal the body, to kind of rest and just kind of be. So it's a bit of a dance there with scheduling meetings, because you're not always guaranteed a weekly check-in or a debrief after an event, or that's like together as a group. So you get creative, whether it's through tracking Slack and saying, hey, everybody post your comments post event, we'll set up a call, we'll chat it, or hey, let's send me your notes, and we'll put them on our shared network, and then we'll set up a call with the client, we'll kind of collaborate, make sure we're good. Or hey, let's get together in a meeting, let's enjoy a morning together and figure out where we're going. So it's not one way in this world, because you have to take into account people's personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one more thing with the mic, just make sure
Is
it's
it
not on.
hitting?
Just one more time. Yeah,
I
that's
gotcha.
all. You're good. But has your ability to create goals and perhaps guide teams changed from the first time you started getting into events to now? Because I'm sure as you do it more, you get better at it. But when we first started anything, we're terrible. I mean, and even as providers and things like that, if you're trying to run a clinic, or you're a team member within a clinic, initially sometimes that communication piece isn't there, or people aren't communicating well enough. And so, how would you say you've changed over the past couple of years to where you are now about how to set goals for your team and making sure your team's going in the right direction?
Setting goals is incredibly important. I think, obviously, for our world, I mean, each event being successful is the ultimate goal. I mean, if I'm, I mean, and doing it in a great way where people enjoy the process, learn from mistakes if there were any, and continue to build on each stepping stone that they take away from an event. So that's been my goal through building this, while building this company, and with all of the other great team members that we have, has been to, one, be successful, because if we're not successful, we don't have a business.
Yeah.
And that's, I know it's there's trial and error in obviously a lot of different fields. You don't get to do a lot of trial and error with the CEO of a company on stage. You've got to basically know that everything's going to hit. And if it doesn't, there's going to be some serious conversations that happen afterwards.
Mm.
And I've been very fortunate to not have many of those conversations. I've seen other companies that have had just a very minor snafu happen, and they never get brought back
Mm.
to the event. So we run on a very thin edge. But as you build that relationship with the client, and you build that trust, and you continue to execute your events, that edge grows in width a little bit. So you get a little bit more stable. And one, the players. So the team knows that they've got some, not wiggle room, but there's some breath there. There's, like, I don't know if this is making sense, but it's like, it's the event industry is tough. Like,
No, it's
especially
100%.
live meetings, is tough. But you have access to the highest level, executives at a company, which is very rare from an outsider vendor standpoint. So it's just, it's a very, uh, very, again, detail oriented, goal oriented. That's the overarching goal, is to deliver a successful event each and every time out of the gate. But a bigger goal that I think I have for each individual is to get better through each experience, while you're on the road or while you're planning. If we have a failure in the planning process, how do we get better? What do we learn from that, and how do we not let that happen again? And I think that's really helped build the success of the company, is to take away, have takeaways, to challenge and get better, challenge yourself, and get better, and have the goal of being a truly flawlessly executed event on a show site. Not perfection. Nothing's gonna be perfect. We know that, but I can strive for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. So from a goal standpoint, that's our ultimate goal. Have we kind of shifted how we communicate those or drive those? Yeah. I mean, COVID, there was a lot of shifting, a lot of going around and how we're kind of approaching this whole thing because we had to figure it out ourselves. So a lot of us learning on the fly, and there were failures. That was the one thing I think virtual events really allowed us to see, because clients were much more willing to accept not okay work, but just misses. Like
Mhm.
the CEO's internet went down. I can't control that,
Yeah,
like
right.
we had one story where the CEO's, son jumped on Xbox in the middle of a live broadcast where he's interviewing the lead singer of Goo Goo Dolls. And so it's and all of a sudden the CEOs started pixelating. It's like, I got nothing. The client's texting me like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. And then he told us afterwards that his son jumped on Xbox and he didn't know it and just
Oh
sucked
my
all the internet
God.
bandwidth down. And so it's like, I got nothing there. So there was definitely some grace provided by clients during this virtual space, because I mean, we're all at home trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the
And I think,
goal, I don't know if they were clearly stated. It
right.
was still, the goal was like but I think the goal of that period was to stay mentally healthy and to survive. That was the goal, to survive as a company. Let's figure this out. Let's navigate it. Let's navigate it together, and let's survive.
And it's the same thing with clinical care. I mean, you have people who, you can have doctors who rub patients the wrong way. They're not listening to them. They're late to an appointment, or, thankfully the healthcare system isn't as like walking the line as the service industry, because you don't have these crazy CEOs, making sure everything has to be perfect and all this other stuff. But there's definitely some similarities you can be drawn. You need to be
Yeah.
you need to be able to be on it, and you need to be able to figure it out as you go. But also, you have to adapt, and you have to understand that what you're providing is a service, and that the most important thing is who's ever you're giving the service to. And so, for you, what were some of the failures that maybe you can talk about prior to COVID, and how did you bounce back from them?
Some of the failures prior to COVID
I don't
would
know if you
probably
have like a
be
story or like an interesting
yeah,
story.
yeah, no, there's always fun on the road stories where maybe something small in the room wasn't quite set like it should be in it, and the team didn't quite check it, and you're building off that set piece, and all of a sudden the room is skewed, and you're like, we're not centered, or the set's being built overnight and it started, and then all of a sudden you get back into the room and the graphics aren't laid on the set properly, and so you have to basically flip the whole set. There's very small, those are bigger, but they weren't unsolvable. Those are very easy, somewhat easy fixes. Basically, you can, it's not the room being set a little bit off skew wasn't a massive deal. Client was fine. We ate some of the cost of adding some drape and made it look good, and it was fine. Very, very, that happened one time, long, long time ago, never happened again, because we learned the process. Hey, once you come into the room, let's make sure the stage is set where it needs to be properly. If that's not set, then we pause and make sure it's in the right place. That was the one thing. But once we knew that lesson was learned and we applied that to the process to make sure it never happened again, then we were good. Scenic builds, just random stuff can happen. It just, people are people, and they're like, it's late, and just thought one thing and it wasn't quite clearly right, and so you have to fix it. So
How do you
I don't want
believe?
to I don't want to share too much, because it's just things very minor. They're very minor in the scope. You just learn from them, like a lot of the process stuff, like packing a truck. If you've got a forklift in the warehouse to double stack everything and get everything on the truck, you got to have a forklift on the out when you're loading out at the show, or you're going to need another truck.
Oh boy.
All those little minor things that you're like, whoa, hey, we didn't think about the forklift, because everything was double stacked on this truck coming to us. and we don't have a forklift to double stack it going home. So we need to think about
Mm.
this. So there's those little things like, oh wow, that's fun. So
Yeah. Do you think it's those attention to details what made you guys so successful in your ability to stay in the industry and do what you do for so long?
I do. I mean, I think you got to be detail oriented in our space, and allow people to work and do their job and trust them and to grow, and but also be able to recognize, hey, this isn't tracking where probably it should be. How do we fix it, or what do we need to do to tweak it to get it back on track? So I think it's a massive collaboration of great minds, and it's all about making sure you're prepared coming into the space, that you've thought through and had the conversations, tough conversations about whatever that may be. So then when you hit the ground, it's just minor little things you're checking off and saying, oh, we didn't quite think through this, but that's an easy fix. Let's make sure we get that handled. So yeah, details are everything and preparation's everything. So
I love what you're saying, just because in my world with you, and we don't even have to talk about physician. We can talk about coaching. We can talk about personal
oh yeah,
training. We can talk
yeah,
about you as a person, just generally working out. Like preparation and just setting goals and paying attention to the details is how you're going to pretty much do anything. And with how high risk, high reward your job is, it can make doing the little things with working out and or even just running a small little clinic make it a little like you can kind of reflect and be like, oh, okay, well, at least my job isn't like kind of like that high risk, and I can, we can mess up a little bit more, thankfully, in healthcare with that rather than you guys, and so you guys can get callbacks and stuff like that. But
right.
it's good that we can have that. And I think today one of the things that we need to focus on more is definitely setting goals, and also having the wherewithal to be able to set goals and be able to move on to the next thing, so that way the things get done. Because sometimes people just go in absent-minded and not conscious, and they're just like, I don't know, we're just going to work today, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do.
Hmm.
And so what's that?
No, sorry. I thought you were. It almost sounded like you dropped off. Sorry.
What's
No,
that?
I completely agree with you. And it's setting goals, but it's also knowing what it's going to take to get to those things. Yeah, it's knowing the goal, but what does it take to get there? And if you can't really kind of list out whether it's tasks or items or whatever you want to call it, and getting those goals, I know that's a pretty obvious statement, but sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't have that goal. Well, you've got to put in the work to figure out what it's going to take to get to that goal too. Like what is, you can't just say, I want to run a marathon, and not do the research, do the studying on, how your body's going to react when you start training, what foods all that work to get there so you can accomplish the goal is super important as well. You've got to, and I know I'm probably stating the obvious, but it's incredibly important to take the goal, but break the goal down and really dive into it, and have a really true gut check with yourself about, is this not the goal is realistic, but am I willing to do the work? Am I willing to
Mm,
do what has to be done to get there? And if I'm not willing to do that, what's maybe a goal that I can, okay, maybe I need a secondary, like a first goal to get to the next goal. Like maybe that's running a marathon. Maybe it's running a 10K, and you're doing a certain amount of time. Set that and then work towards it. I know that's probably generally kind of talked about, but a lot of people, that can be applied to business too. It's like, I want to be a $5 billion company. Well, that's a great goal, and you're going to have to do this, and maybe that's your 30-year, whatever it be, but let's hit it. You're just now starting out with like $100,000 revenue. So let's start here. Let's get the $1 million, And so I think, and then what's it going to take to get there? So it's easily more digestible from just a step-by-step process. Does that make
yeah,
sense? I don't
it
know
does.
if I'm
No, it
really
does. And I think the other thing too is not to be upset if the plan doesn't work. Like, for instance, if you plan to
yeah,
run a marathon, or you want us to start running, and you be like, okay, I'm going to run a marathon, but then say you get into running and you actually don't like running.
right.
Maybe you like biking. Like maybe you want to do
Yeah,
a 100-mile bike ride. Switch goals, and that's
yeah,
completely okay. Like being able to shift gears into something completely different is something that you got to be okay with, and not just because you set the goal to run a marathon, and you didn't end up doing it, doesn't mean you can't shift gears to do something else just because you don't like it. Because for me, I hate running, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's trash. I hate it. So, but I like working out. I like lifting. I like mountain biking, and those are the things that I enjoy. And I think with fitness and health in general, you got to find the things that aren't that like they don't feel that resistance. I think we all have a good idea of what we like to do and what we don't like to do, and what we like to eat and what we don't like to eat. And so if it feels like it's like really, really, really difficult, maybe there's another option out there for you to try and exercise, or maybe there's another way of eating. Like, let's say you don't want to intermittent fast because you like to eat breakfast. There's other
Right.
options out there for you to eat.
Yeah, self-awareness. It's huge. And being aware of what you're being in tune with your body. Like I know there are days where I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, it's not time for me to get up yet. I probably should get up right now, but I
Yeah.
just need another hour of sleep. And I know I'm going to come out on the flip side way better than I am right now. And
Mhm.
I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with waking up. And again, there's has to have some flexibility in your schedule and all that stuff. And I know some people are not allowed to do that. But you also have to think about that on the flip side. Okay, if I'm waking up consistently tired, then I probably should go to bed earlier, right? I
Mm.
mean, it's just there's things that you have to be self-aware about. And like if you're just not getting through the day enough, like you're not having the energy, again, look at diet, huge, exercise, and sleep. It's mind, body, and I'm a soul component as well. Like you've got to take care of the spiritual side as well. So it's like you've got to look at all those things and make sure you're self-aware and be willing to face a fact that you might not like. It's okay that you're like, man, and I've got to make a change. Now, what are the steps? A lot of times it's like finding accountability, finding somebody to really kind of hold you accountable, hold your feet to the fire. But being self-aware and looking at yourself in the mirror and going, having honest conversations, it's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's nothing. I think nothing but good can come out of it.
Have you had that conversation with you in your sleep?
Oh, a lot of times. Not we'll sleep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, look in the mirror and going, I've got to change habits. Like you just get into the rhythm of like, busyness. Life happens, and all of a sudden your schedule, your intentions are not really being followed through. So you have to have those conversations, and you have to say, nope. I've wavered here. I've loosened up here. I need to tighten things
Yeah.
up a little bit. And you gotta call a spade, call yourself out, got to be willing to.
Being busy is definitely addicting. Like, you can really get into a rhythm and a flow, and you want to get up and do more, and you want to do this and you want to do that. And then,
Right.
like you said, one thing falls to the wayside. You're like, oh, I still got it. I'm still okay. And then,
Right.
one thing else falls at the wayside. And you're like, no, it can't be my sleep. And it's like, we're in this like state of denial up until the point where we're like, oh, I need to go to sleep.
Yeah. No. And then, and it's part of it's like, you get home and like, it's later in the day maybe, and just the day's gotten away from you, and you want to actually have some hangout time with your girl or your guy or whoever it may be, and you're like, or your kids or your dog or cat, whatever it may be, and then like the last thing you want to do is like force yourself to go to bed early because you need to sleep because you actually want to enjoy some time. So there's that mental that you've and I think you said a great thing. Like sometimes busy, you can just be busy, and I think I've tried to be wise, a bit more wise in how I approach the day and scheduling as well. Like, you know, be more concise in how you schedule meetings. Be more thoughtful in how you plan out your day. I think that's something I've had to work on as I've kind of grown in my career and grown as a person and grown in age and maturity. It's just been more thoughtful and just being busy is good, but sometimes you can just be busy to be busy. And I think it's important to be thoughtful and like say no to a meeting if you really don't need to be in that meeting, or like, hey, do we really need an hour for this meeting? Can we concise? Can we kind of make this concise and tighten this up versus an hour, make it 30 or 15? I think that's something that allows you to then plan properly for later in the day, so you can get a workout in, or you can get home earlier so you can enjoy some time, so then you can go to bed earlier and
Mm.
get that full night of sleep if you need it. So I think it goes back to intentionality, planning, details, the whole thing that we've been talking about. So
Yeah, and finding time to decompress too, and
yeah.
like, because you start touching on it a little bit, you're like, I wanted to go home and play with my dog, see my kids, see whatever. And sometimes we don't think about that as much, where it's like that downtime is super important. You got to almost like, you got to make time, you got to plan to downtime. I've had to do that a little bit more lately too. And it's kind of weird because you think of like the weekend used to be something that you really look forward to, or like even when you were a kid, like summer vacation was like, you had this huge portion of your year was like downtime. And now, as we get older, it's like you find like 4-hour intervals where you can kind of get that downtime in. And it's interesting how we never focus on that as we get older as an adult. It's just kind of, we got to get more busier.
Yeah, no, and again, it's not like, vegging out on the couch. You can be busy, you can stay active in downtime. It's just quality time. I think it's that interactive with, whether it's your friend groups. We just had, some friends over last night, and it was such good conversation. It was just so good for the soul.
Yeah.
It's that interaction, that personal interaction that I think, well, one, people have just missed for the year. It's important. It's so important to have a friend group that you can, contact with and bounce ideas off of, and think through things with, and whether it's a loved one, a spouse, a significant other, if you have that, awesome. Or if it's a kid or whatever it may be, that your child or a dog or whatever, or just you, if you're a thoughtful kind of introvert, at least, having that outlet of, downtime, refocusing, whether it's reading a book, whatever it may be, just really focusing on yourself too.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it any better. And I think that's a great place to kind of finish things up here. And believe it or not, it's been an hour already. And I kind of want to close off with a few final questions here, if you're ready for them. And this this portion of the podcast is called the Health Me to Health You. And so I gave these questions in advance so you can think about them a little bit. And so the first question is, if you had the attention of everyone in the world for 30 seconds, what would be the one thing you would say?
It's tough. Be kind. I know that's something simple, but I feel like something we miss nowadays. I feel like kindness goes a long, long way. And treat someone as you'd want to be treated. I know it's kind of the golden rule. I know it's probably cheesy to say that, but I feel like right now there's so much like, everybody's angry at everybody. And it's
a great sound effect, by the way.
if I disagree with you, I hate you. That's not it at all. I feel like we've been driven to that a little bit by a lot of outside forces, and just, it's like so contentious. So I'm like, hey, let's just, push the brake a little bit, and let's just kind of like breathe, and let's like have a conversation, but just be kind, listen like you want to be listened to, and talk to someone like you want to be talked to. And just be kind.
Love it.
I know it's very, very utopian. I know it's very easy, but it's true right now, man.
There's merit.
I've seen so many people, like family members, like, it's just be kind. Like, we're all gonna make it out of here. Hopefully, well, nobody makes it out of here. So like, we're gonna have to at least be kind while we're here, So.
Yeah. Well, in the world of Twitter, I think sometimes it's kind of hard to find the kindness in the world. You're like, right. I don't know if there's any kindness anymore. I
dropped it, man. I was on Twitter, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna. And there's nothing wrong with Twitter. I was a fan. I'm kind of wish I still was on there because I got my news from it. But it was just so filled with animosity. It was so like, it was like, man, you guys just like pump the brakes a little bit. Like you wouldn't want somebody talking to you like that. So let's just like chill, So I just went off of it. It was just too negative. So
good for you. That's great. Yeah. Second question: which event was the most memorable for you to coordinate, and why?
So we did an event in Bermuda where we mapped, and what projection mapping is, where you have extremely high powered video projectors shooting content onto a certain building. Like there's like the Sydney Opera House is mapped. Those where they kind of changed the sails on that building into different or they have different content. The Magic Kingdom castle is mapped at night. Everybody's seen that kind of famous, kind of incredible stuff. So it's a really, really cool. It's really cool technology. It's really cool from a creative standpoint. We went to Bermuda, and there's a beautiful old fort in the Naval Yard down there, and it runs about, I think, about 170 feet wide, about 24 feet tall. And we did an award show where we mapped that whole building, old, beautiful white stone kind of Navy fort. And we arrived, I don't know, 3-4 days before the event, loaded in, had some challenges, got really creative, had an amazing technical team down there, made it all come to life. And the crazy thing is, like, the night before, we had to get everything kind of tuned in on the building. I say the team did all this, and check everything out. So you've got to basically make sure the light and the grid that you've created for this building matches up. So then everything that you've created content wise plays on the building properly. And so I'm out there with the team at 2 a.m, and we were in this island in the middle of the Atlantic, and there's these frogs and birds, and we're watching building being kind of mapped by this incredible, guru. And then we shut everything down, get it done, have to, and then this massive rainstorm comes in. And so we've basically tied the projectors down on this building. But if they move, you got to think about it, we're shooting from 200 feet away. So if they move like 1/2 inch, it's going to skew that light projection off by a massive amount. So we didn't know if the projectors had been moved. I know it was a long answer. We didn't know if the projectors had moved or anything, but we're like, hey, let's say a prayer and we'll come back tomorrow night. Well, the event starts during the day. So during the evening. So as they were sitting down for dinner, it was slowly, dusk was arriving and sunset happened. And so we were like, the projectors are projecting the content. So as it slowly kind of rose up, we had to kind of use this uplight on the columns that was projected on it, and it came out perfectly. And then we ran the content. By far, it was the coolest event that I've done some other great events, but just from a scenery, you're on an island, you don't have access to anything really technically, really everything had to be shipped over. It was a very challenging event and a very rewarding event from a content and just from a overarching experience standpoint.
When you said Bermuda,
sorry, that was a long answer. I apologize.
No, you're good. When you said Bermuda, I was like, when's the hurricane coming? When's the hurricane coming? I was expecting, I was like, there's going to be a hurricane in here somewhere.
Yeah. No. We were good. Just a big storm that night. So
good. And last question here. For those with a busy lifestyle, perhaps not familiar with how to exercise, or their habits aren't geared towards a healthy lifestyle, what bit of advice would you give to them?
It's tough. What I would say is plan, like we talked earlier. Think through where you've got to be, and see where you can tighten up the busyness. That's one thing that I've tried to improve on lately is like, don't be busy just to be busy. Tighten up the schedule to allow yourselves to have windows. And maybe it's not maybe you're not a gym person. Maybe you're not a running person. Maybe, hey, explore some biking. Maybe just go walk, at a brisk pace in the city that you're in. If you're traveling all the time, get out, and instead of taking an Uber if you're downtown, walk to the next restaurant, walk after dinner. There's little things like that just help. I've learned things kind of just be better, just make you feel better when you're on site. But I think the one thing, if I could give one piece of advice, it'd be like, really check your schedule. See if there's any meetings you can condense. See where you can kind of tighten up on that timetable to allow yourself to either have some time, whether it's just to kind of meditate, whether it's to read, whether it's to go out for a bike ride, a run, or hit the gym, whatever it may be, just to be active. Whether it's kayaking, go hit, take a Saturday and go kayak. Find a national park and get a pass for a year and get out there and explore a little bit. Go hiking, do something, but really look at your schedule and really see what can be tightened up.
Yeah, super important. And I think a lot of people can benefit from what we talked about today and everything we just kind of finished up here with. So thank you so much for spending this last hour with us. It's been great. And I'm sure a lot of people could learn from what we've talked about today.